Alright, so I just watched The Flash, the latest film from DC, and I have some mixed thoughts on it. I mean, in general, I would say it's a fun and interesting film. It's enjoyable. It never bores you despite its 2 hours 20-minute runtime. But almost as if to balance it out, there are flaws with the storytelling. There are flaws with certain aspects of the way the story is executed. So before I get into the details, let me just tell you what works straight up. Number one, if you're going into The Flash expecting a really good Barry Allen story, a great character story for the character of Barry Allen, aka The Flash, then I think you're gonna get that. And in fact, you're gonna get a perfect iteration of that story because they nailed the emotion here. There is genuine heart brimming throughout the film, and there are moments that really hit you from an emotional perspective. I mean, of course, the basic story is Barry Allen goes back in time trying to save his mother. That is a very strong story point, and they really bring out a lot of emotion from that. So, that really, really worked. The second thing that I absolutely loved was Batman. Yes, this movie is called The Flash, but there is tons of Batman in it. It literally opens up with a scene where you see Ben Affleck's version of Batman hunting down a couple of people. I always enjoyed Ben Affleck as Batman. It was really great to see him again in action. It was a lot of fun. But the version of Batman that you see for a major chunk of the film is Michael Keaton. I always enjoyed Michael Keaton's portrayal of Batman, though I never quite loved it. I don't have the nostalgia for those Batman movies by Tim Burton as a lot of people do. But I really, really, really enjoyed Michael Keaton's portrayal of Batman here. I genuinely loved what they did with him. And he literally gives a really good performance because he kind of understands the zaniness of the narrative. It's almost like a self-aware version of Batman to a certain degree, not kind of where he makes self-referential jokes or something like that, but to a certain degree, it was really a light-hearted, enjoyable performance that I think added a lot to the film. He was a really great presence throughout the story, and in a few sequences, he literally stole the show. He was that good, and it's kind of interesting to say that in a Flash movie that Batman was one of the better aspects of it. It's kind of interesting, but I have to say Michael Keaton was fantastic, and so was Ben Affleck for the brief time in the intro. He was great as well. I genuinely loved what they did with the character of Batman in it, how they utilized him into the story. Another thing that really works here is that I thought they did a very interesting thing when Barry travels back in time and changes up things. He gets to meet another version of himself who's not the Flash. He is just Barry Allen. He doesn't have the superpowers. And so the dynamic between both of these characters, I thought they nailed it. It was very, very well handled, and it brings out some really great character moments for both the versions. And it's really interesting to say that because both of them are essentially the same character, but you see such a distinction between both of these characters that really worked all the way through. There was one more thing that I really enjoyed, and that was the humor. I really have to say, this movie is hilarious. It is so funny. Literally very, very funny, especially in the first half. And these were not just some ridiculous jokes thrown at the screen. It was really cleverly done. There are some really good jokes in it, and it's not your typical MCU humor where they just kind of have a joke a second, and some of them are cringe, some of them don't work, some of them work. I thought it beautifully balances out the story with the kind of jokes that they were going with, and it really fits in well with the characters and the kind of story that they're telling. It really worked very well, and I thought it was hilarious in a lot of moments. Now, coming to the things that didn't work for me personally, number one, and probably the thing that a lot of people are going to discuss coming out of the film, is the visual effects. Certain sequences had some amazing visual effects. I thought the film genuinely looked great and colorful all the way through, regardless of how specific things looked. It generally looks very colorful. So I think I can give props for that. But there were a few sequences that were so so not good. I mean, they were just not good from a CGI perspective. It almost felt to me like I was watching a video game, and not in a good way. It just felt really off, especially towards the third act. I think the first two acts had some really decent, watchable, good enough visuals, but then when it comes to the third act, it got very weird. It's not that great. The CGI is not that great. It's not particularly the director's fault. I mean, of course, we know all of the behind the scenes stuff that happened with this film. It was not given enough time to, to kind of polish out a lot of things. I don't particularly blame the director, and if someone has to be blamed, it's probably the studio. But let's not get into the blame game. I'm just telling you as a guy who's observed something from the film. The visuals are not that great in a few sequences, especially the third act, but in general, they're decent, they're fine, but that's about it. And I think this really leads into the fact that there is nothing exciting in terms of the action. I don't know if it's particularly because the visual effects were not that good, or I don't know, there was just not a single action scene that I can look back and say that was memorable. It was fun and enjoyable in the moment while I was watching it, but there was nothing memorable. There was nothing different they did. It's basically Batman going in his bat copter, what do you even call it? Bat flight? Whatever, that machine, and shooting at things. It was him punching people. It was, I mean, it was pretty normal. It was not something that really left an impact or made a mark on the story. It was just things happening. And even Flash, he's just running around, and in slow motion he's just kind of punching dudes. He's doing some interesting things with the phasing effect that he has, and it's pretty much more or less what you expect. There's nothing really that leaves an impact on you. There was nothing that kind of blows your mind in terms of action. Another thing that I personally felt was a disappointment was the character of Supergirl. I thought the actress who plays Supergirl did a fantastic job. She was great, and I literally think it was a perfect casting, because the way she looked, the kind of acting she did, and just it fit in so well with the character of Supergirl. I understand the importance of that character in the story, but they really underutilized her. You barely even get to see a display of her powers, and really it almost feels like at a point that she's going to be a crucial central character in the story, and then all of a sudden towards the end they just kind of sideline her. And I understand why they did that, because this is a Flash story, this is not a Supergirl story, this is not a Batman story, this is a Flash story, and I understand that. But it's almost like they make it a huge thing that they're introducing this character, and then she's just sidelined later on. So I don't know, I don't think it left such an impact. And this movie kind of gets very weird and zany as it reaches the third act, and I genuinely thought that it could have made the point it was making in a much better way. It's like it had the weight to kind of have all these cameos, and talking about the cameos, it's ridiculous. Like, the amount of cameos in that third act was just so unexpected. It was completely unpredictable, but it almost feels like a display of cameos rather than being like a crucial and integral part of the story. It was just more like a display of cameos. Not that I wasn't interested or entertained by it. There were certain cameos that genuinely left me speechless, but in perspective of the story, they were just distracting me from the things that were happening during that time. And so the intensity and weight that moment should have had was completely missing because of this distraction that the film had. It is, however, a good movie. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's bad by any means. But also on the other end of the spectrum, I don't think it's like a masterpiece and the best superhero movie ever made, which is what the first reactions of the film said. I mean, reading those reactions now is just hilarious to me. It's literally hilarious that the early reactions called it one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. It barely even comes close. I just don't know what happened there. But anyways, I enjoyed it. It was fun. Go in for the emotion and the character story, and I think you'll be very satisfied. I was satisfied. I wouldn't say it was not good or anything. There were not any glaring issues, but the issues that were there did pull the film down. So, with all of that said, I'm going to give The Flash a 3.5 out of 5. I'm very interested and curious to hear your thoughts about The Flash, because this movie has been getting a lot of mixed reviews. So I want to know what you guys personally thought about the film. So please do comment that down below, and thanks a lot for watching. Thank you very, very much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Stay tuned for more videos. Keep enjoying movies, and I'll see you again.